by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
So it's clear that the Browns, again, have a kicker problem. And this has been a problem since Phil Dawson has retired that has bit this team in the ass more times than you would honestly expect. It's happened over multiple coaches, multiple GMs, multiple quarterbacks. You name a quarterback that's played for the Cleveland Browns, I can point to you to a kicker who cost them a football game at some point, right? Whether it be Austin Seibert or Cade York and Andre Schmidt just threw his name in the hat. Dustin Hopkins, he did a fair amount of this. We have had a historic run almost, it feels like, of kicker instability. That kind of reminds us of our quarterback instability issues in Cleveland. And I want to approach this conversation not from the know-it-all standpoint that a lot of the internet likes to have these conversations with, right? When you talk to people about kicker, a lot of folks like to talk like they know the obvious answer. This has been my number one annoyance about having conversations about kickers online. And it's turned into a meme on this channel where people think I hate kickers because I hate how people talk about the position. Because when you have these conversations, people have these conversations as if they know what the fuck they're talking about when it comes to the kicker position. But the reality of the kicker position is nobody knows what they're talking about. Like, I'm just going to be honest with you. Nobody really knows what they're doing when it comes to kicker. If you look at how the kicker position gets filled in the NFL, it is not by drafting them, right? The kicker position, if you look at drafted kickers who are with the team that they have been drafted by and have gotten a second contract, you're talking about like two guys in the NFL, right? I think McPherson, maybe the kicker out in Buffalo, Bass, if he's still there. I think he might have retired. And then Mason Crosby for a while was up there. There's probably another guy, maybe Moody got a contract or anything else. But most of the time, the kicking problem for a team is solved by going through the carousel, right? Which is you keep a kicker, he misses enough kicks to where you cut him, you sign another kicker, and you do the same thing. Like most teams are on the kicking carousel. And what that indicates to me is that is a position that the NFL does not know how to actually scout. And I would argue with you, nobody in the NFL knows how to scout a kicker. Real quick, before I continue talking about kickers, let's talk about our sponsor for today, Sleeper. Hey, guess what? The NFL season is finally here, and that means you've got a fantastic opportunity with daily fantasy football on the Sleeper app. Football has never been more exciting than it is now with players like CJ Stroud, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, etc. Pick on stats for these stars like touchdowns, passing yards, receiving yards, and fantasy points and more for up to 100x payout on Sleeper. Get your picks right and you can win big. Use promo code WORSTTAKE and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Download the #1 sports app today and experience it for yourself. Also, remember that you can use the promo code WORSTTAKE and get up to $100 match on your first deposit. If you've ever heard me talk about during the draft my disdain for drafting a kicker, it's not because I don't understand the value of a kicker, right? I think that's the thing that's been most misconstrued of all of the points that I have that people remember, is that I hate kickers because I don't think they're valuable, right? Like, this is what most people run with. No, I understand the value of a kicker, especially if you're the Cleveland Browns this year. You're running this low margin style of offense, right? Where you're trying to churn out offensive points and control time of possession. That requires you needing a good kicker. That requires a consistent kicker. The team that's been the most successful with that strategy over the last 5 years has been the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, a lot of times when we talk about Pittsburgh not going under 500 under Mike Tomlin, we give all the credit to Mike Tomlin. I don't think Mike Tomlin deserves all the credit. I think Mike Tomlin makes a lot of coaching decisions throughout a game that actually makes the life of his team more difficult. He's really timid. He likes to punt too often. He does things that, if you pay attention to the game management of it, aren't the greatest. And like, if he had worse luck, he would be Mike McCarthy. But because he's Mike Tomlin, because it works out for him for a number of reasons I'm going to explain, people kind of give him the credit. But I think a lot of the credit Mike Tomlin has for not going under 500 is, one, most of those years he had a franchise quarterback. In the years he didn't have a franchise quarterback, he was able to run his low margin style football successfully because he had a kicker who was one of the most reliable kickers in the NFL, in Chris Boswell, right? You take away the franchise quarterback, you take away Chris Boswell, and he's a good coach, but a coach that can go under 500, right? But those two things have kept him afloat, especially Chris Boswell over the last 5 years. You look at the Steelers games, so many close margin games where Chris Boswell's kicking 3 or 4 field goals and he's asked to make a 55-yarder here, a 45-yarder here, right? Like, a really difficult job that they ask of Chris. He does it consistently. That gives them the points that they need to win these games on the margin. The Browns want to play that same style. We just found out Sunday why you got to have a kicker in those situations. The Browns even asked their kicker to do anything difficult. That's the most damning, well, not damning, that's the most frustrating part of this, is that if Schmidt had missed a 55-yard field goal, I could live with it. But a 36-yarder, an extra point, you got to make those. Those are expected 100% ranges for a kicker. So understanding that for this margin of football, a kicker is important. I understand the value of kicker. I understand why it's attractive for a team like Cleveland to draft the kicker to hopefully solve the kicker problem. But the reality that we need to accept is that we don't know enough about how to scout for kickers to reliably draft them and expect success. My theory with kickers is that you just got to go on the carousel. You can't commit too hard to one, and you just got to churn through them until you get lucky. Because what happens at the kicker position is oftentimes teams will churn through kickers, and then they land on some undrafted guy or some guy who's bounced around teams, and then that guy sticks for a couple of years. And then you rock with that guy until that guy starts missing kicks. That's usually how the kicker problem gets solved. And the issue with that, it not being really skill-based and being more luck-based, the issue with that for the Browns right now is that this is a problem that they need to solve today, right? Not tomorrow. They need to solve this problem today, right? If they're going to play this low margin of style football, they need a good kicker. So when something is only really solved by going through it, you don't really get to expedite the process. Like, I know people are going to play hindsight 2020 and act like they always knew that Andre Schmidt wasn't going to make a 36-yard field goal and an extra point, despite him, I believe, being a Lou Groza Award winner. Is that correct? Did he win the Groza Award? He was one of the best kickers in the UFL. The UFL has been the best breeding ground for kickers in the last couple of years. I mean, you're talking about a place that's produced the last 2 great kickers in the NFL, Jake Bates and Brendan Aubrey. So we know that the UFL produces kickers. This guy won the Lou Groza Award in 2018. And then he comes to the NFL and he gets so nervous, he rushes through his process so much that he can't make routine kicks. There's nothing to scout for that, right? You can't watch the tape and be like, yeah, I figured it out, right? This isn't something that Bubba Ventrone himself can solve. I know he's the special teams coach, but the reality is in the NFL that the special teams coach is not coaching up the specialist kickers, right? Bubba Ventrone's job is to make sure that kick coverage and punt coverages are sound, is to make sure that the right people are returning kicks, that they're making the right decisions when they return kicks. He's got nothing to do with the success rate of the kicker. That's not on Bubba Ventrone. That's on the kicker itself. That's why kickers get fired when they don't make kicks. It's not like, oh, Bubba's got to give him the right play call to make a kick. That's not how that works. And Bubba Ventrone has never kicked a football in his life. He's not teaching these guys who have spent their whole lives kicking footballs how to kick footballs. This is not how it works professionally. Now, there are some teams that have that contract out kicking specialists or something like that. I asked Bubba Ventrone about this during training camp, actually, when I was down there, and he confirmed that the Browns do not outsource any kicking consultants. So maybe that's an area where you can find some criticism. But I'm going to be honest with you, as much as it would make me feel better that they would have a kicking consultant, I don't really think that the kicking consultant is going to make the Browns better at finding kickers because there's no proof to that. A lot of teams have kicking consultants. A lot of teams still have shitty kickers. It's just what it is, right? There's not a good way to scout for the position because the variables in the NFL versus the variables in college are just simply different in a way you can't anticipate. Right? In college, if you miss a kick, your scholarship's not going to get pulled. You're not going to be without a job. You're going to be fine. Right? Also in college, if you ever looked at a college roster, and I would beg you to do so because I've seen this happen before. It happens all the time. Look at how many specialists are on a college football roster. They have like 6 kickers, 3 punters, 3 long snappers. Like the college teams keep a ridiculous amount of specialists on the team. What that creates is, one, there's a community for these kickers, right? So they're not on the team alone without friends. They got other kickers on the team that they hang out with, so it's less lonely. If you ever interacted with the dynamic of a football team before, you know, in a situation where there's 1 or 2 kickers, a punter and a kicker, that kicker and punter, they're going to be pretty lonely, right? So, you know, there's more of a community there. If you miss a kick, it's not the biggest deal in the world in college, right? They'll just put somebody else out there, or you'll get another chance to kick again, or maybe you just do kickoffs or whatever it is. There's a lot of different utilizations of kickers in college that the pressure's not really on one kicker in the same way that it is in NFL. NFL, you miss a kick, you might have to move towns, right? Like, it's really that real. The pressure is that real. I think another thing that doesn't get accounted for is that defensive players are longer. The ball's getting snapped faster. The play's happening faster. This is a mechanically based thing, right? So you got to be okay speeding up your kick, slowing down your kick. That's really difficult to scout for. It's almost impossible. Again, this is why drafting kickers has been a long-noted, horrific way to try to solve your kicker problem. It's not something that you can solve with skill. It's really only something you can solve with chance and time. It's the only position in football where I believe that's true. I don't think that's true at quarterback. I don't think that's true at running back. I don't think that's true at linebacker or defensive end or edge, right? All these other positions we have studied. We know the nuances enough to be able to scout on some level. Kicking, scouting is completely unreliable with kicking. It's been unreliable. How many guys have you seen? They're going to be the best kicker ever, or they're going to be the next big thing, and then they stink. They get to the league, they stink. How many guys of that had the Browns drafted over the last 10 years, and they stink because we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to it. I don't know. You don't know. We don't have the answer, right? Nobody has the answer. Everybody solves this kicker problem by pure chance. Justin Tucker, right? Now, obviously, he has the cases against him, and he's suspended for 10 games, by the way. Anybody who's begging the Browns to go sign Justin Tucker, he's not going to help you next week versus the Ravens. But Justin Tucker, for example, people think, oh, the Ravens know how to scout kickers. They got Justin Tucker. He was a UDFA, dog. They got lucky. They got lucky. They just brought him in. He didn't miss kicks. They kept him, and then he didn't miss kicks in the game. The same ideology and strategy that brought you Andre Schmidt also brought the Baltimore Ravens Justin Tucker, which is to say the strategy doesn't really change much about the result when it comes to kicker, because really what happens with kicker is you should keep one out there until he doesn't miss kicks. And that's just what the Browns have to keep doing. Have to keep throwing kickers out there. You can try to, we're going to wait it out and get through this guy's rough patch. It's usually not worth it, statistically speaking, getting through a guy's rough patch. Usually not worth it. We tried it with Kate York. We tried it with Dustin Hopkins. It doesn't work out. I mean, there's a million other kickers we tried it with. I could tell you this right now. It usually doesn't work out. You just got to keep going through them until you find one. Now, that's going to be the question going forward. I'm not going to sit here and blame Andrew Berry for not knowing that a former Groza Award winner can't make a 40-yard field goal in an extra point. You should expect anybody who's kicked anything professionally to make a 40-yard field goal in an extra point. Hell, Andrew Schmidt has made 40-yard field goals in an extra point in practice, in preseason with the Battle Hawks. He should be able to do that. There's no excuse for him not to be able to do that. Where I will start to be upset about Andrew Berry with this is if it continues to happen and we continue to do nothing at the position. To give Andrew Berry credit, he did something about Dustin Hopkins. We all wanted Dustin Hopkins up out of here. We all were worried that this would happen with Dustin Hopkins. And if this happened, if the Browns lost this game in this way, and it was Dustin Hopkins that was missing those kicks, everybody would be 100% correct to be mad at Andrew Berry about this because that's on him. We knew that Dustin Hopkins had been shaky. We continued to roll the dice, try to get through the rough patch, and he continued to be shaky. That's not a surprise. Andre Schmidt being this terrible, that's a surprise. Gonna be honest with you. Nobody expected that. Even the most Captain Hindsight of told you so assholes out there on Twitter. You go back, you look at what they were saying 2 days ago. They were happy that Dustin Hopkins got cut, and they were happy that Andre Schmidt was the full-time kicker, right? They don't know. Nobody knows what they're talking about. Everybody who tries to tell you they know what they're talking about, they don't know what they're talking about. Where I will be upset is if the Browns continue to just kind of think that they know what they can push out of Andrew Schmidt, or if they just keep throwing Andre Schmidt out there. My bad, not Andrew. Andre Schmidt out there. That's where I'll start to be upset with Andrew Berry, right? If Andre Schmidt costs you 2 games, you know what I mean? Like, fool me once, okay, that's not a big deal. Fool me twice, then shame on me. Like, right? Like, that's kind of how that works, or fool me twice, can't be fooled again, if we're using the Bush quote. But, you know, again, I'm not going to trip about this happening. Whatever. Stuff happens. It's football. But if we stick with Schmidt and Schmidt stinks going forward, well, now we have reason to be cynical about this, right? Like, now we have reason to be skeptical about why you would continue to go forward with this. I can understand not wanting to give up on a dude after one game if it were any other position. Kicker's one of those positions where the time-tested strategy is, hey, once the dude stops making kicks, bring in somebody else. That's just the strategy that works. It's about numbers. It's about just getting through guys. You can bring in undrafted guys, former veterans. They all have the same chance to stink or be good. I think you just got to go through guys. And that's been my number one criticism of Andrew Berry and how he's handled kicker, is that they kind of operate in a way where they think they can scout that. And the entire league has found out the hard way. You cannot scout this position. It's not a scoutable position. Nobody, you can't point to a single team that is like the Green Bay Packers with quarterbacks with kickers. You can't point to a single team with it. Every team has had a rough patch at kicker because you can't scout the position. That's my 2 cents. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.